So today the session is about creating space on nurturing connection through repair and reuse. And I'm here today with Charlotte from West Not Leicestershire. Leicestershire reduce, reuse, and something else. I can't remember. Reduce, reuse, and repair, I think it is. Apologies.
Recycle.
Recycle, thank you.
Sorry.
And it is the 8th session as part of Waste to Wellbeing program from Light Seekers. And really today, what I'm hoping to achieve is that for all of you in this room to be inspired by what it is to be a community that together creates space for themselves and for one another and support each other in nurturing connections with people around them. And we're going to be inspired by this idea of community, by the stories that we're going to collect today all together. Obviously the stories from Leicestershire Community Cupboard on West Not Leicestershire, as we introduce ourselves, as well as Leicester Fixers, really is about the stories that you share with one another to build a caring community. So about my story, I've been in Leicester for now approximately 12 years. I mainly engaged with communities in Leicester that were involved in, that had interest in environmental and social issues. So I volunteer for Transition Leicester, and then Footpath Leicester, which supports communities to reduce their carbon footprint by creating neighboring group. And then after that, I engaged with this idea of repair, and in 2014, I organized the Green Festival of Making and Mending that welcomed approximately 600 people, all about inspiring people to reduce and reuse waste. And all this led to the initiation of Leicester Fixers in Leicester. And at the same time, I was starting my doctorate at Loughborough University, looking at the factors influencing people to repair small electrical items. Leicester Fixers is a beautiful story. Not only did we organize the festival, we also organized about 23 restart parties in Leicester, one outreach program where we went out in Leicestershire and supported 6 community repair groups to start their own communities of repair, supporting people to repair their broken item. And this was absolutely fantastic. And through my doctorate as well, looking at the factors influencing people to repair, the critical factors always came through in the process people go through in trying to repair items, that actually their peer and family support was significant in supporting them to change and build on their capacity and their competencies to try to repair further. Along with that, I did the training in asset-based community development, asset-based community development that kind of reinforced this idea that communities and all the individuals that you find in communities that as gifts and competencies and assets and tools, all those individuals all together can support each other to create beautiful communities. And it's about us as individuals to map those assets and give confidence to people so they can flourish. Oh, sorry, I'm going back. And then I joined Quetzal, and Quetzal support female survivors of childhood sexual abuse. And it gave me an opportunity to really understand as well, the importance of caring for individual well-being, and it's very important work in engaging in community and supporting them to find the right balance by being more in touch with their emotions, so that when it's time to show up in communities, they are at their full capacity. And this obviously led us to Light Seekers, an ongoing conversation with Schedule. So yes, so this is probably one of your first stories that you can collect here about the power of communities in supporting both personal and community well-being. And then I've met Charlotte Booth as well over 5 years ago, and here she is with us. Hi, Charlotte.
Hi. Yes, so I'm the founder of Waste Not Leicestershire, Reduce, Reuse and Recycle, and I started it nearly 5 years ago, um, inspired by Hugh Fearnley-Whittingstall's Hugh's War on Waste programme on BBC. I think it was BBC Four, and just was inspired by what he was doing, and basically Googled. Did a Google search to see if there was a group in Leicestershire, and there wasn't, and thought, right, I'm going to start one, and then developed it through Facebook, and promoted it by speaking about it to people around me, like when I'm out shopping and doing other things like that. And I've also done a lot of events that I've been invited to do over the years. Obviously, because of COVID, we've not been able to do any events, well, like physical events, and I've not done any online stuff for that. But we're now up to just under 11,000 members basically, and in the last couple of months it's gone up by another 1,000 people, and it's just amazing. And then I started the Leicestershire Community Cupboard as well 4 years ago, and basically it's there to support people with material items, clothing, household items, baby equipment. It doesn't have any criteria. It is literally for anybody that needs some support. And most of my projects are self-funded. They're run voluntary by myself and by other people. Yeah, so that's me. Thank you. As a community, let's commit to the journey. Reflect upon your repair and reuse journey and activities, successes and failures, as well as your hope for the future. And there's a 1 minute reflection on this for you to think about, and that's for everybody collectively in the group. Thank you.
It might sound surprising, but committing to a journey in a community is very important. So please join us.
Let's commit to the journey. Rate the following questions with 0 as being low and 7 as being high. 1. How valuable have you planned this session to help you create more space and nurture connections in your life? 2. How participative you plan to be. 3. How many risks do you plan to take during this session? 4. Think about the people today. How much do you plan to invest in their learning, their journey towards change, as well as their well-being? And this is a 2 minute reflection for everybody.
So if I could start with Beth and Durga group, how did you find the exercise? If you could just give me a sentence, one of you.
No, it was just great to connect with Beth after meeting her yesterday. So we kind of just had a good little catch up actually.
All right, and what struck you about the question? Apart from the chat, just like first word that came to mind.
I think participation and how much someone feels they can contribute. And sometimes it's about, so we kind of mentioned, if you feel you have something to say, then be confident to say it. But if not, then that's fine as well. You can kind of be listening, and that's as valuable as well.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, thank you. It's quite like having the opportunity to gauge those two aspects is very nice when we're engaged with the community and people in general and accept it actually. Breakout room 2, Kim, Krishna and Michael, if one of you would like to sum up the conversation and also what struck you about the question.
Shall I say?
Yeah.
We talked about recycling things and how things are made kind of not to last. And Michael and I, because my childhood was in Kenya, how much we had sort of common in that I grew up without having to recycle kind of everything and reuse and make things last. And Michael said it was the same here post-war. And Kim said she was at the other end finding it kind of difficult. Am I right, Kim? So that's what we were discussing about. And Michael said to me that there were repair shops springing up in places, and that gave me a great idea of a brother who is fantastic engineer, and I thought, like, I'm going to signpost him because he needs that right now.
Thank you.
Yes, so that's what we did.
Thank you. What about Nicola's schedule? What was kind of like the conversation, and what struck you about the questions as well?
I'll just make a quick comment to Krishna. There's also a group called REMAP, which is specifically engineers involved in helping to provide solutions, technological solutions. It's a volunteer group as well for your brother.
Oh, thank you so much for that, Nicola, because I will pass that on. REMAP.
So there were four in our group, including Kajal and I, and we realised that we'd both known you and Charlotte quite a long time. We didn't hear from SJ because I think we spoke too much. And Nell talked about wanting to know about fixing things, and that's where we said about the Hack Space and Leicester Fixers and other groups.
Which we're quite local as well. So tell us where the Hack Space is again.
You say that, Marie.
The Leicester Hack Space is in Farnham Industrial Centre. I put the information in. But I find it very interesting that actually you all kind of really give yourself all, even though like you kind of read the questions, but the conversation seems to have been very involved from the get-go. But I will come back to this question a bit later in the presentation for you to have a rethink as to why they are so significant. What is the problem? What is the problem? Well, there is this consensus that we throw a lot of waste. So the average household in England produces in excess 0.5 ton of rubbish each year. In total, this is equal to around 23 metric tons. So the equivalent to the weight to 2.5 million double-deckers buses. So, thinking about the image of that is a queue of 2,500 metric ton. Gosh, I can't say it properly. Double-deckers will go around the Earth about 1.7 times. And this is just for England. So imagine if you were like, if we consider the global planet as well. In the West Midlands, I think households throw away about 529 kilograms per year, which is a lot of waste ultimately. And obviously, for me, one of my main concerns, especially when I started with Leicester Fixers, was about electrical waste on the ways that actually go in developing countries and are recycled there. And just thinking about our global impact as well. So the inspiration with Leicester Fixers was really to look at how we can reduce our impact on the environment through repair. And there is also this buzzword called the circular economy, and the circular economy, which is this system whereby the main purpose is to create loops between the user, consumer, or citizen and the industries that support the maintenance of item, the reuse of item, the refurbishment of item, and recycling, and so that the materials are always going into a loop and always being reused, so that we can reduce our impact on waste. But one of the main challenges as part of the circular economy, which was the context I was looking at through my dissertation, is what is the role of the user in that particular system? There is obviously plenty of literature looking specifically at industry and how they can create relationship between one another, but still, there's still question about what is the role of this user in this particular system, how do they participate in it, and actually, I was talking to a friend of mine recently who is interested in the circular economy on the role of citizen in particular, and she was interested at looking at Leicester as a space for case studies because of the strong involvement of the communities in environmental matters, to really explore how citizens or people on the ground can participate. And which make me think that it's very good to ask a question. can you please raise your hand if you've tried to repair an item alone or with others in the past? Thank you. All right, so there's a lot of hand being risen. Can't see everyone. You can always click with the little square on the side to see if other people as well. Keep your hand up if you tried to repair any item in the last 5 years. Great. Wow. And raise your hand if you have given or received a second item to someone in the last year, in the last month, in the last week, in the last day. I think, yeah, I gave something yesterday, actually. So here you've got your solution. You have citizens, you have prosumers, you have people that can support the transition towards the circular economy. And coming decided to this prosumer, maybe you haven't heard this term before. I tend to move away to the idea of consumer and user, but I use the term prosumer instead. And a prosumer have the dual and simultaneous function to destroy and create value. They produce, but they also consume. When you cook food, you produce value, but also consume the value, and you participate all in the customization of one world. And it's kind of, and really, it's just being a person who got capacities, who got gifts, who got the ability to solve problems and engage with people. And I think this is what I've tried really within my research to bring back by changing the language that we use, moving away from this idea of consumer and user. And this is quite significant when, when looking at the marketing and the designer literature, this dichotomy between the consumer and the user, where the consumer and the user are considered passive, when actually they are very active individuals that provide us with a lot of learning and stories that help us to develop products and services moving forward. So this relationship is very interesting, how labels are being used to create dichotomy. And I think it's very important when engaging with communities to be mindful as well of those labels that we use. So I was looking specifically at the design for sustainable behavior, collecting stories from users to then guide, maintain, and ensure change. But through the research, what I've learned on this kind of help, developing product, but through the research I kind of learned from the users that actually they were quite capable to find the ways to actually repair and reuse the items that they have without needing a marketer or a designer along the way. When working with Leicester Fixers on creating this community of repairer, and I'm sure West Not Want Not on even the Leicestershire community covered sometimes have the challenges, is that as community members, creating those networks, sometimes we can be seen as a service provider, seen as the one going in community to organize all those repair events for everyone else and repair product for people. But really, we are all building our own capacity and our own confidence to do more in our community on engaging other people to do so. Really, we are just a community of people building each other's confidence so that everyone, we can show up with our own gift in the community. So, yes, to come back to this idea of labels, really labels such as service user, consumer, user, community, all this is kind of supporting us to plan action. And when engaging with people, we have to be mindful of those labels in particular, so that we can create a deeper connection with one another. So if you are a person engaging with a community of repair or reuse, really think about what is your role, within that particular community, and what can help you to understand communities and members' behavior better. And, what can help you to understand what is successfully repair an item or giving an item away. I'm I promise you, by the end of this representation, you will understand everything that I'm coming from. It's just, please follow me on this journey. So to understand communities and behavior as we engage with communities, there is two ways to understand people and communities. You can do it through studies, and this is what I've done through my research by asking questions on things, but also to do it through storytelling. And storytelling is very the basis on how we can build communities from the ground up, by collecting stories, by having conversations, engaging with one another, so that we can understand what they need, what do we need, and what we can create together. And there's two kinds of stories. There is one that weave with one another, and there is also the one you receive as a member of the community. On thinking about that, I thought I would do another little exercise to support you in your engagement with communities as a means to create space. And I invite Charlotte to invite you for another conversation.
My neighbours and I did this. Get into a group of 3. Tell a story of how you've got together with a neighbour and did something great for your community. It's a 10-minute discussion in breakout rooms again. Thank you.
This was a story from when I was a teenager, and on our street we had a space which kind of became a bit of a dumping ground, and the council would then come and just take that rubbish away. But what we did as an activity in the summer is we cleared the space ourselves, a lot of the young people who live on the street locally, and then with the support of some of the parents, and we then like put artwork and painted the walls and sort of reclaimed that space as a space where the children can play. So in a way, it was about saying this is a space that's valuable to us and it's not a dumping ground, and to make sure people wouldn't dump rubbish there in the future. So that was a time I remembered when we collectively came together. But I think that kind of story, because of the pandemic, it's been much harder to do something like that again, I guess. But that was something that came to my mind straight away.
Okay. Well, you know, we're dreaming the future. It's probably from the past, but we're still dreaming the future. So thank you. It's a very valuable story. And what about one story, you know, that struck you in Beth, Nicholas, and SJ group? Or one sentence, no one word. Go on, Beth.
Yeah, so we were talking about, different stories, and Nicola was talking about getting her church involved with eco churches, and kind of thinking about how their church can be more kind of environmental, and thinking about the things that they were already doing around that. So they were already reusing books and having kind of a space where people could exchange books. So that was kind of encouraging to have those conversations and get an award. They got bronze Eco Church award through that work.
Thank you for sharing this story. I think it's inspiring to find out, like, actually there is already resources in our community that we can probably tap into by going to churches where people congregate together with the same interests. So associations on groups like that is very inspiring. So thank you. I ask you a second question, which was, can you discuss in your group the resources that were used in the story to achieve your intended goal? So what I'm going to ask you to do is just to shout out the resources that came through in the story that were used in your story, but not repeat the same one. Just mention it one resource once. So if you would like to shout out some resources that were used in your story to achieve your intended goal.
People,
yeah. I think people are nodding, people. Any other resource?
Community.
Yeah. Any other one?
Like a physical space where people can come together. So like it could be a church or a temple or a mosque.
Yeah, a space as well. Yeah, definitely somewhere we can be together. Here is a space as well. Any other ones that you can think of? Other tangible tools that are useful to support
At
you?
the moment, technology. Without Zoom, we wouldn't have achieved it.
Yes, technology.
And websites.
A website, a platform where we can tell our stories and just signpost people, definitely. Any other one? You came up with quite a few. I'm sure as conversation build up with your communities on exchange, even through this simple exercise, you can actually think about more resources that you can build upon. So really those questions are very good to support us in engaging with community. Let me just go back to my, and good questions really help us to find good stories. And I think in communities, good stories are almost more important than actually any other stories. As long as you got kind of this hero journey going on, you inspire people and make them want to join in. So really remember that good questions help to find good stories, because it helps a person to recognize value not only in themselves but also in others, on kind of recognize, oh, this person got all this going on, all those people around them to create beautiful things, and then before you know it, you can create this connection and start something together. And when it comes to reuse and repair journey, there is other very good questions you can ask. Tell each other a good story on succeeding to repair an item. Tell each other a good story of getting a second-hand item from someone local to you. I did find in my research that when I asked questions, more negative story about how they felt, well, they could find a lot of reason as to, they very easily you can get, you can get into that space, and before you know it, you don't find any solution. But when you talk about succeeding, achieving, before you know it, there is all those opportunities and all those people that come through in that. So yeah, this is a very good exercise to do with the community to really nurture that connection. And to continue this kind of idea of good stories, in design, we've got this tool. I will just share my screen with you again here, just for you to see this tool. It's called the Value Proposition Canvas, and it allows people to understand the user a lot better in terms of what they gain from a certain activity, the pain that they receive, and also the task that people have to go through in terms of achieving a certain goal. And this helps, businesses or communities to
pains, gains, and customer jobs.
Yes, customer jobs here. It helps communities to really, or businesses to really kind of fine-tune their product and services. Within a community, good stories are very, very important. So what I'm going to invite you to do is to focus on gain. So what do we gain from repairing and reusing items? And I will leave you to have another discussion if that's okay with you. I'll put back into groups. You need to think about past experiences. What did you gain from trying to repair an item? And what did you gain from giving or receiving items from your local community? Who would you like to start? Should I do it per group again?
Community links.
Community links.
Yeah.
Yes. Relationships, yeah.
It increases your creativity.
Increases your creativity, yes. So there's some personal gain here. Yeah, and community gain too. Thank you.
Saves money.
Yes, it does. There is financial sustainability in that support families and individuals. Yeah.
It's a feeling of achievement.
Yeah, this is always very good gain, to feel that we achieved something. Thank you. Any other one?
You can give money to good causes. So if you buy something from a charity shop, or if you give something to a charity shop.
Yes, there is definitely a good feeling in giving and receiving to charity and to all as well. Yeah, thank you. Any other one? All right.
Someone mentioned feel good in our group as well? Just the feel-good factor.
Yeah, the feel-good factors. Yeah, there's definitely a feel-good. On you know, like as we exchange goods, we also exchange conversation, and there's this connection that is created as well that we always have to value too. So yeah, the exchanges. Thank you. Great. Thank you very much. So yeah, good stories on a way of connecting people together and think about something bigger than themselves, you know, the personal well-being and also the well-being of the community as a whole, and this good feeling that goes on is a great way to connect people. So again, you know, it's about those good questions that you can ask your group, the people around you, to bolster people to come together. So this is another one to think about. And when I was talking with Schedule at the beginning of this process, we talk a lot about creating space, on this idea that when we give item and we repair item, we can create space within our home, which is probably another gain as well. And I think create space is important, not only with physical objects, but also intangible one. And sometimes, you know, we need to create space, sometimes by removing yourself by joining new communities and removing ourselves to others. All this is very, very important. And I could put my slides again, but I'm just going to talk. And you know, there is this idea of minimalism. Minimalism is about eliminating the unnecessary so we can focus on what matter most. It's a label, and there is many labels that we can use to describe minimalist: the essentialist, the eco-minimalist, the enoughist, the soul minimalist, the experientialist. I found them online, and I was like, oh, so many labels to support people to drive to action. Or maybe, you know, you may subscribe to another label as being an environmentalist or any others, or just someone who care about people and the environment and more. I think creating space and reflecting on this idea of creating space on all the work that we've been doing through Ways to Wellbeing is really about creating space for self-care, you know, some space to really take the time to take care for ourselves. And I'll come back to the slide that Shabnam shared with us, which was the second Ways to Wellbeing event that we've organized. And she said, and she was looking at emotional regulation on how important it is to regulate, you know, to be in touch with our emotions so that we can better engage with others and be able to, you know, show up with confidence and say what we think. And there is some self-care practice, and repair and reuse or creating space within our home is part of this self-care practice, but it's not the only one. There's other ones. And so, you know, as much as we could spend a lot of time creating space only with getting rid of our items, we need to keep balance by doing physical activities, being in touch with our emotions, managing stress, engaging with people, having some, you know, time for spirituality or some personal hobbies and things like that. All this is part of self-care. And I think the opportunity with creating space, especially with reusing and recycling and repairing item, as we achieve greater self-care for ourselves, it's easier to show up in our community and achieve our plans and our goals. And this is why we come back to the question I asked at the beginning. When we are in this time of balance within our self-care, we can ask, prior to engaging with community, the right question, you know, how have we planned to engage with our community? With purpose, you know, how participative do we plan to be as we engage with people? How many risks do we plan to take while engaging with a set community? Depending on whether we've got the emotional resources to do so, or the space within our home to do so, because we don't have so many things to deal with. And it helps us also the opportunity to think before engaging with a community about, you know, how much do we plan to invest in their learning and well-being, their journey towards change, as well as their well-being. Because ultimately, communities, as much as ourselves, is what we're looking for. Feeling good, feeling a sense of achievement, of gain. And so as much as, and so this is what I want really to leave you with when thinking about creating space through repair and reuse, or creating space through any activities you engage with and the way you nurture with connection, to think about how balanced, how your well-being is, and what do you really want to intend to do with the community you engage with. And use those questions as well to prompt your community to really think about how much risk they are willing to take, on how willing they are willing to invest in the well-being of others, on how much resources that they have inside to actually show up to the world. And so this is kind of the idea behind this idea of creating space and nurturing connections through repair and reuse as a case study, but it's not the only one. So I'm going to just finish with that story, which is just to finish and close before I take any questions. I'll let you reflect. So you've got a treasure in your house. Have you ever heard this story before? Maybe not. I told this story many times to casual and things. So it is the story of a girl, a woman. She got a very, very big house, a very, very messy house, on a very, very messy garden. And she got a big hole in the roof of her house and she's very depressed. And so she go out of her house, and then she meets a medium. Really, the medium is a witch, and the witch tells her, you got a treasure in your house. So she goes in her house, and she's like, well, where is the treasure? And the witch tells her, the treasure is in your bedroom. And the lady said, okay, I'm going in my bedroom. And then she goes in her bedroom and she starts cleaning her bedroom, and she finds necklaces and she finds clothes on everything. She's like, oh, there's no treasure in my house. She managed to clean her bedroom though, and it looks very nice now. So she goes back out and she goes back to find the witch, and she's like, well, the medium, but really is a witch. And then she tells her, there's no treasure in my bedroom. And she's like, the treasure is in your kitchen. And so she goes in her kitchen and she starts cleaning about and find a lot of jars, and she cleaned, and she even like raised the floorboards, but there's no treasure. And she managed to clean her kitchen, and it looks beautiful, but there's no treasure in her house. So she goes out to the lady and she's like, there's no treasure. You really make me hungry now. And she tells her, well, the treasure is in your garden. And so she goes in her garden, and then she starts cleaning the garden and find ripened fruit and beautiful flowers and make a beautiful garden. And then she realized, you know what, there's no treasure in this house, and this witch is a liar. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to use the ripened fruit to make some jam, going to use the flowers, and I'm going to use the necklaces and clothes, and I'm going to put a stall out there, and here I am. And that before she knows it, she sells her flowers, she sells her fruit, she sells her jar, she sells everything. And the witch popped by, and the ladies tell her, well, you've been lying all this while long, there's no treasure in my house. And the ladies tell her, well, it's only like all the coins you got in your hand, aren't it your treasure? I think it's a nice story, but I think there's another story that is most important in that particular story. It's the story of the people who love flowers, the story of the people who love jam. It's the people, who came through, who show up, who were there to support that person in her journey as she achieved goal. And all she needed to do is to gain the confidence, the motivation to actually start through. And sometimes it's just your neighbor can just help you to do that by inspiring you with a story, or giving you a hint that there is probably a treasure in your house. So maybe I invite you all to find that one in your home and share it with us all soon. So here we go. Thank you. Thank you. All right, we've got 7 minutes. I'm happy to take questions. I'm sure you will need to digest today because it was a bit of a... Any questions or comment?
I think today has just been really inspiring, and like you said, I think lots of information to kind of digest and kind of go away with. So thank you so much for a brilliant session. I did have a question. So for me personally, I don't feel that I'm really part of my community. I do live in Leicester, but I work in Solihull, so I don't actually spend that much time here. I'm not part, I don't have a religion, I don't have children, and I think it's sometimes quite hard to kind of make connections with my neighbours. Like I couldn't even tell you my neighbours' names and stuff. And I've recently did some training with a project, Community Circles, which is a asset-based kind of community project, and I would really love to approach people in my community to see if that's something that would be something that people would want, or wouldn't want to do things to people, I would want to do them with, but I have no idea really where to start because I don't feel I have those connections. And I just wondered if yourself or anyone else had any ideas as to where to go about, other than maybe approach my local pub.
Definitely. I'm sure there will be a lot of people, many people here are connection, but to give you an idea of asset-based community development, and I'm sure you've done the training as well, you have to think in different layers. So you've got individuals, we've got all gifts on capacities here in the room. And then you've got associations where people gather where they've got the same interest. And then you've got institutions that work between assets. And we've got Beth here from Near Neighbours, who is part of an institution, and she can share some of her assets with us all. And then we've got, you've got connections, so individuals who are connected to groups. So I'm part of Quetzal, I support Quetzal, but I support Leicester Fixers, so you can find us online. I represent those two groups, and then kind of weave it out. I think it's about your goal, and then there is place-based assets, which is like the community centers and the churches and the places. And yeah, it is, with Footpath, we had to go and knock on door to talk to neighbors, and it's not easy. It's not easy at all. It's probably better to go to people, but starting with the place that give people a reason to live where they live, such as the churches and the community centers, are a good place to start with. But I'm sure other people can probably give advices as well.
Thank you.
If you want to share some ideas too.
Yeah, I think certainly, just doing more things that you're interested in general can introduce you to people that are similar to you in a sense. I'm actually a yoga teacher, and I went to meet a friend of mine who's opening up a yoga studio. I actually don't even know him that well, last weekend, and he mentioned that they have a running club every week, so I went there to see him about yoga, but actually we ended up going for a 10k run on a Saturday morning, and it was just completely unexpected. And through that contact, I met 6 new people on Saturday. And, sometimes it's just a really unexpected. I think you just have to kind of persevere as well. Don't feel, disheartened if you don't meet people the first time round, but when you're going through to do something that you actually genuinely enjoy, like the hack space, or I don't know, whatever it is, yoga, because I used to teach before the pandemic yoga classes, and actually a lot of the people that have been participated in the Ways to Wellbeing project are the people that have actually come together through the yoga classes, so I think slowly it's that community, you're building that little community, that inner circle.
Yeah. On Facebook, you can find Leicester Fixers, on What's Not, Want Not, Leicestershire as well. I think if everyone who got links to groups in Leicester who want to put it in the chat for everyone else to share with, that would be very appreciated.
I would say actually to Kim that, with Waste Not Leicestershire, again, I have got children and they are in school. And so initially in the village, the small town that I live in, my connections were with people with children through school. And then after that, if I hadn't have started Waste Not Leicestershire, Reduce, Reuse and Recycle, then I would be in a similar situation to you, where I really wouldn't know that many people in my community. But because of starting that group, I've made lots of new friends in Syston, where I live, which those people wouldn't have crossed my paths otherwise. So it's just about starting, and I now have friends all across Leicestershire, and there are people that have helped me out at events, or help me to sort out clothing donations for the community cupboard, or you know, and I've got people all the time offering me help left, right and centre. In fact, it's difficult for me to coordinate all of that at the moment because I've got a lot of other things going on. But yeah, don't give up. And these things organically will grow, and they just take time. And it's about finding confidence and reaching out. And I used to be a really shy person and I wouldn't speak to anybody. And now I talk to everyone. So there you go. You'll be fine.
Yeah, there is very first stage of collecting the stories and just asking questions, as many people as you can. And before you know it, you have a spark and meet someone and have your core group to kind of move forward. I promise you that, like, even with Quetzal, my project is about support Leicester South Asian women and raising awareness about the trauma of shadow sexual abuse. I was really confident, my confidence was very low at the beginning, but I've met incredible people along the journey, and we did manage to achieve all our goals. And we'll continue the story as well. So, yeah. Anyone else?
Just go at your own pace. You know, it could be anything. You know, walking group or a sewing group, anything like that. You know.
Yes. Start with your interest is always a good place to start. Any other questions or comments or support for Kim?
One of the discussions points that we had in one of the groups was around finding community assets and kind of finding those spaces that are available to communities. And often there might be a barrier of cost, so you need to rent the space, or you need to know that organization or have that connection already. So how do you identify community assets, and then how can you access them? And that was just a question that we had a bit of a discussion in the group, but I just wanted to open out to everyone else here as well.
It's a very good question, and I'm sure like I will invite everyone to actually watch Durga's presentation of yesterday, who really kind of brought forward this idea of financial sustainability. And I think for very long for me, we've been volunteering for a lot of projects. It's something I kind of put aside. But actually, it's very important to ensure that we take care of the people within the group and also access services. So yeah, there is different funding parts, isn't there? Is anyone would like to share as well? Because
in terms of venues and spaces, you just have to sort of think outside the box, really. I mean, I know another yoga teacher, and the regular venue that we've used isn't going to be available yet, maybe till September, if then, and anyway, it had its limitations. So obviously we've all been chipping in where else do we know about that may or may not be suitable for this type of group or that type of group. And, you know, just for you it's harder because you're further away, but use your local contacts and just see what's there, and notice what else is happening. See what other events are being held where, and that sort of thing.
Yeah, and then ask the questions. And the worst that someone can say is no.
Yeah.
So, if you don't ask, you don't know. If they say no, fine, okay, move on to the next thing.
Yeah, I mean, we looked at a project with a local group in Leicester, and they were considering a sort of moving their base. Well, the facility that we've got on offer wouldn't, we looked at them and they looked at us, wouldn't suit that, but it would suit another form of delivery that they do. And then equally another group came, and what they wanted was exactly what we could offer. So it just varies.
Yeah. What time are you going to leave? Going back to asking the question.
Sorry.
Oh, I just said, so it's going back to asking the right question, like Marie said before as well. Yeah.
Yeah, and kind of planning that in, isn't it, before engaging with any group or individuals, and take risks sometimes as well. So yeah, it's already 12. If there is no more questions, I think I'm going to close the session now, but I want to thank you all for joining in today. Obviously, the presentation as well as the video will be available, so you can definitely reuse some of the questions that I put forward within your group as well, just to kind of bolster conversation, as it's a good way to get people together and just create this sense of community, on just, on this is it really. And then tomorrow we have a collaborative session just to reflect reflect about the journey that we went through, Waste Wellbeing, and obviously talk about, you know, some of the projects we want personally to bring forward to support people in their well-being as well. So it's not only about Light Seekers, but it's about all of you and what we would like to achieve within your community as well. So yeah, thank you very much. Would you like to say a word, Kajol?
Good. So I just wanted to say thank you to Marie and Charlotte for this session. If you're attending our session tomorrow, you can use the same link to access the session. Please share your experiences in learning with others using social media or else to support community learning. And I hope to see you all tomorrow. Please also share any feedback via this chat or by email, as this really helps to secure funding to run future programs. We'll be sending out a short survey, which should take no longer than 2 minutes at the end of this project. And we'll be really grateful if you could fill this out for us too, because we really want to deliver more sessions like these and work with even more practitioners on related themes focused on well-being. So that's it from me, and I believe that's it from everybody else as well. So, so unless anyone's got any last comments.
Yeah, you can find us on Facebook, Leicester Fixers, and West Not Want Not. And please,
Waste Not Leicestershire.
West Not Leicestershire.
Waste Not Leicestershire, reduce, reuse and recycle. You can find us on Facebook. Yeah.
Bye. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.